Hello everyone, friends. Once again let me welcome you all to the third lecture on quantitative techniques. Friends, the topic that I will be speaking in this lecture is really an important in the sense that it forms a foundation for any quantitative techniques, and that is data interpretation 1. Let us look at the very basics of data. In fact, what is data? Data is any information presented either in the form of a numerical figure or in any alphabetical form, and that is the basic information. Based on that, after processing, it will be used for our application of any quantitative techniques. In that sense, the data really forms a foundation for any quantitative techniques. In fact, it is the bedrock of data analysis, and interpretation is formed by the collection of data. Data is basically unorganized statistical facts and figures collected for some specific purposes, such as analysis of any kind. There can be different sources of data, such as statistical and non-statistical sources, and therefore, a look on sources of data is also important. There are different methods of data collection depending on the types of data. Mainly, there are two main types of data, primary and secondary. Understanding the difference between two types of data is important in deciding which method of data collection is to be used. Tremendous amount of statistical analysis are carried out continuously in countries for publication purposes or even for policy framing. And therefore, as far as a part of introduction of this data interpretation is concerned, friends, what we are supposed to do look here is there are two sets of data. One is statistical data and non-statistical data. Statistical data comes from census and surveys conducted by the governments. Non-statistical data comes from office records. And as we have just gone through types of data, we come across basically two types of data. One is primary data and other one is secondary data. What is primary data? Primary data is the first hand data collected for the first time either from the laboratory or from the field. So, therefore, that forms a very important aspect of data, and of course, there are merits and demerits for primary data. What are the merits? It is a genuine data collected for the first time, and therefore, there are no leakage of information. The demerits are its validity depends on the person who has collected the data, and that amounts to be a demerit of the data. And another demerit of this primary data will be it is unedited data, unprocessed data, it is raw data, and therefore, this primary data cannot be used directly for any calculation purposes, and that is what the disadvantage. Otherwise, advantage is that it is the first hand data, best data, genuine data. Similarly, secondary data is a processed data collected from files or registers. Someone has already collected and processed those kinds of data, and therefore, that forms secondary data. Then friends, as I told you, sources of data are statistical and non-statistical. What is statistical data? Statistical sources refers to the data that are collected for some official purposes, like census data. Census data is statistical data collected by the government. Any governments, for example, Government of India collects data every 10 years on human population, which contains various informations related to the humans, and therefore, that forms a statistical data. So, for official purposes and includes census and officially conducted surveys. Apart from census data which is collected by the governments, Office also collects, like National Sample Survey Office also collects data on various aspects which are meant for administrative purposes, which are also meant for policy formations. Such kind of data we call them as statistical data. Then we come across another kind of data, and that is non-statistical data, which usually refers to the data that are collected for other administrative purposes or for private sectors, means for any business organization or any NGOs. If they collect data for their objectives, that becomes non-statistical data. Then friends, let us look at acquisition of data. What I mean is, how do we collect data? What are the procedures for collecting data? What are the things we come across while collecting data? So, let us look at all those things. Statistical survey. Statistical survey is simply collecting data for a specific purpose from the field of interest, will be a statistical survey, and therefore, a statistical survey is normally conducted using a sample. Statistical survey is a sample survey, whereas census is a enumeration of the complete population. In that way they both differ. It is also called sample survey. It is the method of collecting sample data and analyzing it using statistical methods. This is done to make estimations about population characteristics. For example, NSS, National Sample Survey, if it is collecting data on health status of humans, then it becomes a sample survey. The advantage is that it gives you full control over the data. You can ask questions suited to the study you are carrying out, but a disadvantage is that there is a chance of sample error creeping in. What I mean is, the sample error happens because of the problems or the mistakes of an enumerator, if at all, if he or she is committing. So, therefore, that sampling error will always be there. That is why enumerators are supposed to be trained, adequately trained, and they are cautioned to collect adequate data, genuine data, exhaustive data. Okay. This is because the sample is chosen and the entire population is not studied, leaving out some units of population, while choosing sample causes this error to arise. So, when we say sampling errors, two kinds of sampling errors. One is error because of some of the units of the population are left out from enumeration. So, error happens because of that factor also, and sometimes error happens, sampling error happens because of the untrained attitude of enumerators. And therefore, there are advantages and disadvantages with regard to statistical surveys or sample surveys. And advantages of sample surveys are again that they need less time, and sample surveys can be conducted in a lesser amount of money. So, advantages are in terms of time and money, and they are really the merits of sample surveys. Friends, now let us look at census. As I told in the beginning, census is nothing but enumeration of the entire population. If there are 1000 items in the population, the complete history or the detailed information on all the 1000 items if we are collecting, then it becomes a census. So, therefore, census, when we say census, it is time consuming, it is a very costly affair. In spite of that, the government of India conducts population census every 10 years, and some of the countries in the world, they conduct census, population census once in 5 years or once in 2 years, depending on their requirement. So, therefore, census, when you say population census once in 10 years, when you say census of animals, that is also being done by the government with regard to wild animals, census of agricultural produces, census of say variety of plants. When we say census, it can be applicable to many things, like census for humans, census for animals, census for say plants, census for vegetables, and that way. So, therefore, how do we define census? Census is exactly opposite of sample survey. So, therefore, opposite to sample survey, a census is based on all items of the population and then data are analyzed. The data collection happens for the specific reference period. As I told you, once the census population census data is collected by the Government of India, it is for that period only. It is applicable only for that period. Again, the data for the next period has to be collected. For example, census of India is conducted every 10 years. Other censuses are conducted regularly every 5 to 10 years. Data is collected using questionnaires that may be mailed to the respondents or by personal investigation. Responses can also be collected over other modes of communications like telephones. One of the possibility of collecting data in case of census is enumerator directly goes to the respondents with a questionnaire, sheet of questionnaire, requesting them to fill it up and return it back. That is one of the method. Another method is that information can also be collected through telephones. This is another method, indirect method of collecting data. An advantage of this method is that even in the most remote of the units of the population get included in the census method. What I mean to say is, if the respondents are in remote places, if there is a difficulty of approaching that remote respondent who is located at remote places, we can get the information on telephones. That is what the advantage of this indirect method of collecting data. The major disadvantage lies in the highest cost of data collection and that it is time consuming and process. So, therefore, in the process of collecting data by direct interview method, it needs lot of time and money. That is what the disadvantage. Data can also come from registers which are usually available in government offices. Therefore, registers are basically storehouses of statistical information from which data can be collected and analysis can be made. Registers tend to be detailed and extensive. What I mean to say is, registers usually collect exhaustive data and they are recorded in the registers. It is beneficial to use data from here as it is reliable, because to some extent it is a primary data. Two or more registers can be linked together based on common information for even more relevant data collections. These data are usually available in administrative offices or hospitals, and those records can be termed as data from registers. From agriculture to business, all industries maintain registers for record keeping. Some administrative registers also serve the purpose of acting as repository of data for other statistical bodies in a country. Friends, now let us look at types of data and data collection. Like as stated earlier, there are two types of data. In fact, I have already explained what is primary data and secondary data. Primary data is simply the one collected for the first time, and therefore, as the name suggests, or first hand information collected by the surveyor or investigator or enumerator. The data so collected are pure and original and collected for a specific purpose. They have never undergone any statistical treatment before, and that is why they are raw data. The collected data may be published as well. The census is simply an example of primary data, or the data collected by a news reporter from the field can also be treated as a primary data. Then let us look at methods of primary data collection. How are we collecting primary data? As discussed earlier a little bit, data can also be collected as far as primary data is concerned by personal investigation. What we mean by personal investigation? An enumerator personally goes to the respondent, requests him to provide the information and then collects the data. That is called method of collecting data personally. Then data can also be collected by some investigators or mediators, means by requesting some other relevant persons, asking them or requesting them to collect the data and return it back to the place where it is required. So, that is indirect method of collecting data. Data can also be obtained by questionnaires. When we say questionnaires, again in two different ways we can collect information. Prepare the questionnaire, supply them to the respondents and collect the data. This is direct method of collecting data through questionnaire. Other one is you mail these questionnaires to the respondents, requesting them to fill it up and return the same back to the place where it is required. This is another method, indirect method of collecting data through mail using questionnaires. So, these are all the different techniques, and as discussed earlier, telephonic investigation is again another method. This is usually a wonderful technique used by those countries where telephonic facility is almost used by more than 90% of the population. Friends, as discussed earlier, secondary data, as I told you again, a data collected by someone and processed. So, therefore, secondary data are opposite to primary data, in the sense complementary to primary data. They are collected and published already by some organization or instance, for instance, hospital record or revenue records. They are all records available in the educational institutions. They form secondary data. They can be used as a source of data and used by surveyors to collect data from and conduct the analysis. Secondary data are impure. Secondary data are impure in the sense that they are collected by someone. There is no guarantee that the collected data is exhaustive and genuine. So, that doubt is there with the secondary data. Otherwise, it is a usable data, it is a processed data, directly secondary data can be taken up for analysis. That advantage is there with the secondary data. So, therefore, this data is impure in the sense that they have undergone statistical treatment at least once. What is statistical treatment? The primary data is edited. While editing, some amount of mistake must have happened, and therefore, that take it to the level of impure data. In that sense, secondary data is an impure data, really not reliable data, but it is a processed data directly usable for analysis, and that is what the advantage with the secondary data. So, therefore, after having studied or looked at primary data and secondary data, friends, let me repeat once again, primary data is true data, but unprocessed data. Primary data is genuine data, but cannot be used for analysis immediately. These two are the important facts related to primary data. Then, as far as secondary data is concerned, friends, secondary data is usable data, directly usable for any analysis, but secondary data is not really a genuine data, because it is a processed data processed by someone. The genuinity of the person or the enumerator, the person who has worked on the primary data and kept it in the form of secondary data, is not known, and that is why secondary data sometimes need not be a genuine data, and that is why it is impure data. Then friends, how can we collect secondary data? Here there are some of the methods. The one is official publications from where secondary data comes, such as Ministry of Finance, statistical departments of governments, federal bureaus, agricultural statistical boards, etc. Some official sources includes State Bank, semi-official sources, means semi-governments, such as State Bank, boards of economic inquiry, etc. What I mean to say is, the ready-made data already collected by some government organizations, they are available in the form of secondary data, and that is why sources of secondary data could be official publications of various ministries and statistical departments associated to the different ministries of any governments. The secondary data can also come from published by Chamber of Commerce and trade associations and boards. Secondary data, as I told you, also comes from data collected by some NGOs or organizations or research organizations. They must have collected data for their research and kept it in the form of a ready-made data, and that ready-made data is nothing but secondary data. Friends, secondary data can also come from articles in newspapers. Whatever the data we get while reading newspaper, for us it is secondary data, because it is collected by an individual, a person who is working for a news channel or a newspaper. He or she has collected from the field and then processed and then published. So, therefore, published data becomes secondary data. So, all newspapers, variety of newspapers, news channels can be taken as secondary source of data, and therefore, secondary source of data comes from articles from newspapers, journals and technical publications. Friends, after having looked at types of data, method of collection of data, sources of data, now our next need is to look at how can we present this data, which becomes usable for further analysis, and the need of the data that has been collected either by census or by surveys is to process and present in a usable format. That usable format needs classification of data, friends, and therefore, now let us look at classification of data after having studied what is data, types of data, method of collection of data and sources of data. So, therefore, now let us concentrate on classification of data. Friends, what is classification of data? Classification data is simply done based on some common characteristics. So, therefore, classification is the process of arranging data into sequences and groups according to their common characteristics or separating them into different but related parts. So, therefore, after having collected data, the collected data may belongs to both literate and illiterate, but such raw data cannot be used for any analysis, and therefore, next improved version of the data for any use is classification. How can we do that? We can separate that data as literate data on one side, illiterate data on another side. I mean, data related to illiterate persons on one side, data related to literate persons on one side. This will be of some use for further analysis, and that is what we mean by classification of data. Thus, classification impresses upon the arrangement of data into different classes, which are to be determined depending upon the nature, objectives and scope of inquiry. For instance, the number of students registered in Karnataka State Akkamadevi Women University Vijaypura during the academic year 2019-20 may be classified on the basis of, I am sorry, there is a typing mistake, it is on the basis of any of the following criteria. So, criteria could be a sex. In fact, this does not apply to Women University, because all those who are taking admission are females, and therefore, it applies to some other universities. Then age can be one criteria, the state to which they belong could be another criteria, the different religion that they belongs to is another criteria, whether they belongs to rural, urban, semi-urban can be at another criteria. Similarly, the different faculties to which they belong, like art students, science students, students belonging to humanities, commerce and management could be another criteria. Like that, we can also collect data on heights and weights. And another important criteria which usually we do in all the universities is the information of students on their socio-economic category, like below income group, some particular income group, and like that, that is required for policy formation or for university administration. So, therefore, when we say classification, classification can be, or classification of data can be on various different categories, and these categories depends on the problem of interest, area of interest on which we are planning to work. That is what we mean by classification of data. Then friends, there are some rules for classifying the data that has been collected either by primary method or secondary method, and those rules are like this. It should be unambiguous. What I mean to say is, the classification whatever we do must be very clear. There should not be any ambiguity, in the sense there should not be any confusion on the categories created. When we say urban, we must define what is urban. When we say rural, we must define what is rural. That way categories must be defined very clearly. That is what we mean by unambiguous classification. Then another rule that we are supposed to, we mean anybody who was working on collected data are supposed to follow is, it should be exhaustive and mutually exclusive. In the sense, the data collected must be, the entire data collected must be classified. Any of the data collected should not be left out. That is what we mean by exhaustive and mutually exclusive. What we mean by exclusive? When we say certain number of persons are in the particular age group, it must be clearly defined. When you say certain number of students belongs to low income group, it must be clearly defined, and there should not be any overlapping between the economic categories that are mentioned in the application forms. That is what we mean by, that are mentioned in the questionnaires. Okay? Admission application form is nothing but another example of say questionnaires. So, therefore, in that sense there should not be any doubt or ambiguity while defining the categories. That is what we mean by mutually exclusive. Then friends, it should be stable. That means, once you specify the different groups, they must remain stable. It should be suitable for further purpose. What it means? Once the data is classified, it must help us to solve some purposes, because with some purpose, for some specific purpose, data has been collected and classified. So, once it is classified, this classification must help us to solve the purpose of the problem. Then lastly, the rule is, it should be flexible. What I mean by flexible? There should be a scope for further extension of categories. That is what we mean by flexible. Friends, now after having looked at what we mean by classification, and then we have examined rules needed for a better and perfect classification. Now, let us look at the basis for classification, means on what basis usually we do or classify the data. They are usually classified on the basis of different data of different nature. So, data could come from different geographical regions, that is called geographical classification, or area wise or regional classification. Okay? So, therefore, the basis or the criteria with respect to which the data are classified primarily depends on the objectives and purpose of the inquiry. So, generally data can be classified on the following four bases. One of the bases is geographical. As I told you, when you say geographical, it can be area wise, like Vijaypur, Bagalkot, Dharwad, Hubli, Belgaum and something like that. One of the example is, we have a table here. So, region Vijaypur and Bagalkot, KCET candidates, these are hypothetical figures, not actual figures. So, therefore, there are 1200 students come from Bijapur and 1325 students comes from Bagalkot. Since Vijaypur and Bagalkot refers to the geographical regions, and therefore, this kind of classification we can term it as geographical classification. Friends, Now let us look at other kind of classification listed here is chronological classification, that is with respect to time. What we mean by chronological classification? If the data refers to time, that is called chronological data, and classification based on the time is simply termed as chronological classification. And an example here is again for 2 years 2018 and 19 KCET candidates, again hypothetical data. For 2018 12,000 students, for 2019 15,000 students. The table gives an information that year by year the aspirants of KCET examination is increasing. And what kind of classification is this? It is chronological classification. Then friends, let us look at qualitative kind of classification. So, what is qualitative? What is qualitative? It is with respect to some character or attribute. It can be rural, urban, it can be based on color, it can be based on IQ, intelligent quotient, it can be based on sex like male, female, it can be based on habitat, rural, urban, semi-urban, any kind of things. So, one simple example given is, here is again for KCET students. So, number of females may be 10,000 and males 6,000. So, the kind of classification done here is based on the sex, and therefore, it is of qualitative nature, and that is why this is a qualitative classification. And then friends, come another kind of classification that we come across usually in the while working on data classification is quantitative, that is with respect to numerical values or magnitudes. So, what is quantitative classification? It is a classification of data, that data is measured using some metric units. In other words, it is metric data. What is metric data? Measured on some systems, measured on some measuring system. What is measuring system? Either it is measured on ratio scale or it is measured on interval scales. Such they are measurable by some units like liters, length, height, weight. Such kind of data asked for when we are working on classification will be a quantitative classification. And here is an example again with respect to KCET candidates with a hypothetical data. See, less than 5 lakh, it is quantitative in nature. So, number of KCET students with economic background is 8,000. It is only an example, and more than 5 lakh among the KCET students who have applied looks to be 11,000. So, therefore, here what is quantitative? Less than 5 lakh is also quantitative, more than 5 lakh is also quantitative, and therefore, the classification can be termed as quantitative classification. And therefore, friends, what is important in the process of classification of data after its collection is categorization of classification like geographical, chronological, qualitative, quantitative. There can be yet another kind of classification, it can also be done. Next friends, after having looked at data, its collection, source, its type and then classification, further next job, very important job, is to process the data and put them in the form of a table, and that is what we call it as tabulation. Tabulation is a process wherein the data collected is classified and presented in a very usable format. So, therefore, tabulation is a process wherein data is easily usable for answering any type of questions or for making any decisions, and therefore, tabulation is a process related to the data at an advanced level. Collection of data is the first level. Understanding of types of data again comes in the first level. Then after having collected data, classification comes in the second level, and tabulation comes in the third level. So, therefore, there are different levels. Levels are nothing but improvement in the process of handling the data for further use or for further references. So, therefore, friends, tabulation is an important part of data interpretation. Hence, let us now look at tabulation. A statistical table is the logical listing of related quantitative data in vertical columns and horizontal rows of numbers with sufficient explanatory and qualifying words, phrases and statements in the form of titles, headings and notes to make clear the full meaning of data and their origin. Friends, what I mean to tell you is, when we say table, there are important parts of the table. All those parts of the table must be there with the table. Why? Because when we refer the table, we must know from where the data comes, which are the important characteristics based on which classification has been done and data is collected is very important. That is why let us look at parts of the table. If all parts of the table that we will be discussing later, if they are there, then only it will be a complete table, otherwise it will be an incomplete table, unusable table. So, therefore, which are the parts of the table? Let us see. Various parts of the table vary from problem to problem, depending upon the nature of the data and the purpose of investigation. However, the following are a must in a good statistical table. What I mean to say is, there can be more parts of the table, but the minimum requirement of any complete table must contain the following, and they are: number 1 is table number. When you are preparing a table, there must be a number to the table, otherwise there will be confusion in the future that while referring from where this table comes. So, therefore, to avoid confusion, anybody who is preparing a table, he or she must give a number to the table, that is the primary requirement. Then title of the table. Title of the table tells us what is there in the table, for what purpose the table is prepared, is highlighted in the title of the table. So, therefore, title of the table is nothing but a caption, head. The complete information contained in the table is reflected in the title of the table. For example, number of students enrolled in the women university could be a title, and rest of the things are available in the table, but what all things are there in the table refers to what is explained in the title of the table. So, therefore, then the third part of the table, what is important is head notes or preparatory notes. Head notes or preparatory notes, I mean, if any abbreviations are used in the table, they must be made clear in the bottom of the table. Like if S is written, if F is written, it must for female, we must make it clear that F means female, M means male. So, those kind of things comes in the head notes. Captions or stubs. What do we mean by captions or stub? Captions means row headings, stub means column headings. Whatever characteristics, words or numbers used as headings of the rows and columns, they must be made clear either in the form of head notes or in the form of notes below the table. So, therefore, caption and sub means row headings and column headings. Then comes very important part of the table is body of the table. When you say body of the table, it contains all the information collected, processed, classified. Okay, that forms the body of the table. Then footnote, as I told you, there must be a note on abbreviations used. There must be a note on not only abbreviations, the captions refers to what and that way. And very important note that should be there with the table is source of the data. This is very important in the sense that data is collected from where. So, therefore, source of the data used in the classification and tabulation must be mentioned there, otherwise there will be a problem for a user to get complete idea about the information contained in the table. So, therefore, source of the table must also be there, must always be there with the data. Friends, as we have discussed just now on parts of a good table, we have an illustrative table. Okay. For this illustrative table, deliberately table number is not written. So, therefore, this is an incomplete table, but it is only a blank table. So, when you are putting information in this table, then we need title for the table and number for the table, notes, footnotes and everything, source of the data and everything. So, therefore, this is only a format of the blank table. So, therefore, stub headings means row headings, captions column headings, there can be subheadings, sub caption, there can be subheadings, and this forms body of the table. So, body of the table is very important in the sense that it contains real information. Then of course, once the table is prepared, row totals will be there, column totals will be there for further references or for further analysis. Friends, so far we have looked at data interpretation and the basic things for data interpretation starts from data, type, classification, tabulation and everything. Friends, with this information I would like to thank you very much.
ಇಲ್ಲಿಯವರೆಗೆ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ನೀಡಿದ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ SB ಮಾಡಿಗೆ ಅವರಿಗೆ ವಂದನೆಗಳು. ಮತ್ತೊಂದು ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸದೊಂದಿಗೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಭೇಟಿ ಮಾಡೋಣ. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.